Welcome to Talking New York Real Estate with Vince Rocco. Our show is all about the exciting world of real estate and in particular, how it relates to the luxury New York marketplace. But if you are not planning a real estate transaction in New York, we still have plenty of information you can use no matter where you are. Now, here's our show.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I'm Vince Rocco in New York, where the state of our industry is dealing with partnerships. So let's get right to what everyone is talking about. The New York real estate transaction has always been complex. For a long time, ownership in real estate followed a single path. You saved, you waited, and you eventually, if everything lined up, you bought something. But the model is breaking. Today, partnerships is becoming the new path to ownership. Instead of sitting on the sidelines or stretching beyond reason, smart buyers are teaming up. For example, two people with $50,000 each can compete with someone bringing $100,000 to the table. The investor with $200,000 each can step into deals that were previously out of reach. The math is simple, but the execution is where most partnerships fail, because this isn't just about capital, it's about alignment, how you think about money, how you communicate under pressure, what you actually want your life to look like, and how long you are willing to stay in the deal. That's where PairGAP comes in. They don't just connect people, they structure partnerships that are built to last using a 4 pillars framework, which we'll talk about, designed to ensure compatibility where it matters most. That's what we're talking about today. And here on set with me is the co-founder of PairGAP, Nikki Merkerson, and she joins me now to discuss. But first, let me welcome my listeners and my viewers from across the United States and all around the globe. This is Talking New York Real Estate, so let's go behind the headlines and inside the state of our industry.
Hi, it's Stephen Bailey from Roadway Moving and Storage. Listening to Vince Rocco, you know the right partner makes all the difference. At Roadway, we deliver an experience your clients will love. For specialized services and white glove care, choose Roadway. Want to learn more? Email me at steven@roadwaymoving.com or visit roadwaymoving.com.
Okay, everybody, we are back, and I'm talking here with Nikki Merkerson, and we're going to talk about a new strategy or a new, way of purchasing in New York City or actually anywhere. Whether you're buying a forever home for yourself, or you're buying a home to live in, or if you're buying an investment property. As I said in the intro, it's now we're talking about partnerships, and partnerships, we have partnerships in our life based on anything else that we do, but in real estate, not always. So I want to talk to you about PairGAP, and we're going to get into the nitty gritty of what this company offers and understand where it may fit in your life if you're looking to begin, you don't have a lot of money, you don't have enough money, 2 people together, maybe 3 people together, you can put it in one pot and go from there. So Nikki, welcome. Thank you. We're going to talk about your book in a little while, but let's kind of, set the scene a little bit for the audience out there about, the core problem that you guys identified a while ago and what you're trying to solve, outside of the traditional real estate model. Because when I was reading up on you guys a couple of weeks ago, I thought, this is very interesting, and this makes a lot of sense for, even first-time buyers here in New York, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
What is that core issue or problem you guys are looking at?
First, it's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming.
So housing affordability is ridiculous, especially in New York City. And so that's what we're solving, the affordability problem that we're having. And there's no platform or no infrastructure for co-buying, right? That makes sure that people do these transactions safely. And so that's what PairGAP is solving. We're building the infrastructure for people who want to purchase property with others that they're not married to.
So where does it actually, explain to us like the transaction? How does it break down? For example, we've here in New York City, where I'm experienced in real estate, we've had parents buying for children, parents buying with children. Yeah. But the children, young adults, we just say children, they don't really have their own money. So they're kind of buying together, parents putting the down payment, and then the child, paying the monthlies, whatever that ends up being. So how does it actually break down in practice? 2 people come and say, I want to get this done. What is your process? What is your procedure to vet them and to make sure, they can do this together, or maybe even 3 people together?
Yeah, absolutely. What we do is we look at compatibility first. And so, like you said, parents buying with children or even family members buying with other family members, oftentimes they're not looking at compatibility. They're looking at finances and really just worried about pooling their money together and getting financing. But it really starts with the relationship. And so we provide tools that vet partners. And so we're looking at, different things within someone's personality to see if they can match with someone else's personality. And really like a business partnership, right? You have two business partners. You want to make sure that they are aligned, their long-term and short-term goals. They want the same things. And so we're really looking at that to make sure that these partnerships can sustain.
It's kind of interesting when you say looking at the compatibility. And the first thing I thought of is what you explained. Hey, can two people work together, right?
Yeah.
In a partnership, because it is a partnership, whether you're in a business or you're in the business now of buying real estate. How do you work that though? Because most people are different, right? Even when we're family members or even when we're friends, good friends. I mean, for example, I always say one of my brothers and I couldn't be a world apart in personality or in compatibility, or we completely think differently. How do you do that? How do you figure out who's who? I mean, is it an interview process?
It is an interview process and a number of questions, asking the right questions. Oftentimes, these partnerships fail because people don't want to have those hard conversations up front. And so, even if you know each other, there are questions around finances that people are uncomfortable talking about. And so we try to address those questions up front. So what are the goals? Do you want to get into this partnership to live in a property? Do we just want to be investors? What if someone gets married, right? What if someone stops paying? So all of these conversations, but then also looking at those goals and making sure that they align, right? Do we want to build this real estate empire, or are we just buying a place just to live, And so really going through the psychology of matchmaking, looking at how I make decisions, right? How I deal with conflict. That's the biggest thing. And conflict is going to happen. Conflict is inevitable. And so really taking a fine-tooth comb and just figuring out, how we deal with certain situations as they arise.
Matchmaking, is interesting you use that word because, again, that's what I was thinking when I was researching and reading about this. You're actually putting people together. Now, first question is, do you put these people together who don't know each other? Or do they come to you and say, hey, Nikki, do you think that the two of us or the three of us, whatever, can do this together? How do you do both sides of that? Or do you kind of say, hey, I got a perfect partner for you?
Oftentimes, people come with their own partners. So if they have friends, we have a lot of couples. We've had single moms with adult children. And so they come with their partnerships, and they want to really make sure that relationship stays intact. And we support them through that process and vetting one another. But then there are some people that say, you know what? I don't want to buy with somebody I have an emotional attachment to, right? We want to go in business from the beginning. And so they prefer to match with someone that they're just compatible with financially.
I wanted to ask you about that too, because, when we're just talking about personal lives, right?
Yeah.
People get together, they date, eventually, they'll get married, whatever. But when it comes to money, and you know this better than the rest of us because you're dealing with people and that aspect of their personalities every day. When it comes to money, though, it kind of changes things, right?
Yeah.
You might love somebody, you might care about somebody, you might be in business with somebody, but there's always that, underlying, there's a lot of money involved, or there's a lot of money on the table. How do I sustain my partnership with this person? Do people bring that to the table when they're discussing this with you, and how do you address that? Because I think it's it could be a real problem, right?
No, it could be. And this is what we're building, that infrastructure to make sure that people can go into these transactions safely. So our real estate prenup goes over all the concerns. So all the what ifs, I like to say. What if someone stops paying? What if we have conflict, right? What if I lose my job? What if someone passes away? So we're going through these questions up front to see what those answers are. And that really helps us frame out the prenup, really just addressing all the concerns up front.
I like the way you address that as a prenup. Because in effect, right?
That's exactly what it is.
Well, we're planning. That's right. We're planning for anything that may go wrong at some point in the future. And look, life isn't perfect. Things go wrong, and we all know that.
They're going to go wrong. It's guaranteed that there's going to be conflict.
100%. So with that said, what are some of the common reasons or things that go wrong that will break up these relationships? And how do you guys try to prevent that when you're vetting up front, when you're planning the partnership up front, and then possibly when it happens?
It's all about communication. They really go wrong when situations change, right? You go into the transaction and you're in, one position, and then a couple of years down the line, things change. And so when things change, again, a lot of people don't like to have those hard conversations. And so we like to help clients through those conversations up front. And also, when conflict happens or when someone doesn't do something that they say they're going to do, what's the consequence, right? Making sure that there's consequences for roles or responsibilities that the other one lacks.
Correct. I talked about in the beginning, again, based on the research I've done on the company, your 4 pillars framework actually to measure compatibility beyond the surface level, matching or matchmaking. Can you take us through, that 4 pillars program or process for us so we can get a better understanding as to how you put people together successfully? Absolutely.
First, it starts with money psychology. And some people have a lot of baggage, the way they grew up, the way their parents dealt with money.
Indeed.
And so we want to really get through how they think about money, what their relationship is with money, and then also their attachment style. We look at how their relationships are currently, right? How much conflict do they have in their relationship? We also look like behavioral finances, right? Like, how do they behave with money? And then decision making. We're looking at how do you make decisions, right? How do you act when the pressure's on? Because that's when the conflict happens, right? When there's a lot of pressure and, again, people are not having those conversations. So we really take all of these 4 pillars around someone's personality, and we have a number of questions that we go through, and then it helps us to build out their protection layer. So building out that prenup, all of those concerns in that one document, and then also revisiting it. Because like I said, sometimes things change. So you need to revisit that contract, and you need to learn how to manage the asset like a business, right? So it's a business partnership. There's already protections in place for partners in business. And so as we build out that prenup, if buyers are interested in putting the house in a business, then that becomes their operating agreement.
It's interesting how, you talk about decision making. I'm one of 4 siblings, and one of my siblings cannot make a decision to save her life. She just takes forever and ever. And even in the grocery store, she's got to look at 100 of the same item and look at the label. And I'm like, just pick one.
Yeah.
Stop it.
Yeah.
I don't have the time. I got to go.
One of the things that we do is
when you're trying to matchmake people, I love that, by the way, matchmaking. When you're trying to matchmake people who one is, a quick decision maker, which I am, and then another one maybe, I don't know. I'm
glad you asked that. When you go for a job and you take these tests and it tells you what type of personality or what type of role you would be great in, we have a similar test. We have our real estate partner test, and it tells us what type of role would I be good at in that real estate partnership. So am I the hustler, right? I'm the one that goes out and looks for property and vets opportunity. Or am I the visionary? Sometimes the visionary gets so caught up in a vision that they can't move, right? They get into analysis paralysis.
100%.
But that hustler might kind of give them a nudge to say, let's move forward with this vision. And so those two personality types work well together. And so we kind of test people to see what type of partner you would be in this transaction. Are you a hustler? Are you the visionary? Are you the fixer? So that we can match people properly.
Which pillar, money, communication, life goals, timeline, are the most causes of issues after closing? We might match people together. We might figure out that this works.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be okay. But which one of those things stands out the most, like after closing? What seems to be, I don't want to say deal crasher, but what seems to be the one that kind of is the most visible?
The exit.
The exit.
Yeah. So timeline is important, right? And if someone wants to exit the transaction and the other one is not ready, then that's where conflict can actually happen.
That's very interesting, because how do you, even in a traditional business, model, how does one handle that? When you have money on the line, when you're invested in whether it's an investment property or live type situation property, how do they handle that?
So we
professionally or calmly.
Always, but handling it up front, and that's what's included in a prenup. And so you look at,
I love that prenup. That's like the
3-year, because it makes the most sense, right?
Of course it does.
This is a business partnership, but it's also a relationship. And, things happen. And when that happens, we're looking at it in the next 3 years, in the next 5 years, in the next 7 years, and revisiting the contract and being able to manage the asset and see what happens if I want out, right? What does the equity look like at that point? Can I buy you out? Do I have to buy you out? Can I just move out of the property if I live there and still rent my space, right? So there's so many different options that buyers go through, again, up front, but then also revisiting that contract along the years. Because
so you go through
change.
all of these things up front in the prenup.
In the prenup.
And then if and when something may happen, you can kind of sort that, I guess, based on what that prenup said. And I'm assuming these are written contracts with people?
Yes.
Investor partners, rather?
Yes. These are contracts these are templates, and they can build out their contracts. And so we give them all the information that they need to make informed decisions and things that need to be included in that prenup based on previous case studies where these deals go wrong. And then also, once buyers close, they're able to again, revisit these contracts in case something happens.
And how often do they actually look at the contract after the fact? We're paired together, say you and I are paired together in a partnership, in an investment property, or even in something that we're living together, and we're 1 year in, and things seem to be going well. But, do they ever come back to you and say, hey, I got a couple of questions for you, or what about this, or what about that? I mean, because generally speaking, just in any business arrangement, there are always going to be questions or things about somebody that might irritate you a little bit. Not that it's going to crash a partnership, but, you kind of think, really?
Yeah, no, definitely. It's always when not so much conflict, but again, if something changes. And so they'll revisit the contract. Let's just say there's like a major maintenance issue, right? Who's going to be responsible for, one, choosing the contractor to come fix it? Is it based on a vote? Right, depending on how many partners, or do we assign someone that's in charge? So that's one of the things that can come up. But also tenants, who manages the tenants, who collects the rent. We have a dashboard post-closing that can manage the asset. So where the money goes to, if there's rent that's going to be collected, if there's maintenance that needs to be done, where does that come from? If someone stops paying, then it may chip away the other partner's equity, right? The more they don't pay, then the others gain more equity, and the one that's not paying loses equity. So there's different scenarios that we revisit after they close because things come up. It just depends.
So it's an ongoing process.
It's always ongoing.
Divorce yourself, there's a word, divorce yourself from the partnership. After close. All right, we're going to take a quick break. There's so much more coming with Nikki right after these messages from our sponsor. This is Talking New York Real Estate on the More Network. Don't go anywhere.
The Everset provides full-service staging and furniture rental solutions in the New York area. For more information, please visit us at staging.theeverset.com or email us at staging@theeverset.com to request a free proposal.
We're back. Nikki, so before we go on, with more questions, take us through the story, how this all started for you, what you did before, where you saw a need to put people together. Did people come to you and say, hey, based on your experience or whatever? Where did all this come from? Because again, when I was researching and reading about the company, I thought, wow, so necessary and so needed, but yet it should have happened, decades ago, and obviously didn't. So good for you. But take us through the journey of how you got to where you are today with the company. What started it?
Let me just say, people are doing these transactions all the time, right? Even I've been in the mortgage industry almost 25 years in banking. That's where I started in mortgage banking. And I worked in Manhattan for JP Morgan. And after the market crashed, it was becoming more and more unaffordable in major cities. And so I covered New York and other cities across the Northeast. And I was also on a dating site at the same time. And I loved how the algorithm just matched people based on compatibility. And I said, this would be cool if we can match people based on financial compatibility.
That's genius. No, literally. That's genius. Because when you said matchmaking, I think we've all been on dating sites, right? Right. And you're right. There are, ways that they meet people or put people together. So go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, no. And when people get together, especially now, a lot of people look at finances first, right? So with this, we're leading with finances.
Indeed.
And then people who have a goal of purchasing and they meet someone else or they know someone else that has the same goal can get together, pool their resources, live in neighborhoods that they couldn't afford to live in.
Correct.
Right? I remember there was a couple that wished that they can live in a brownstone in Harlem. And so they were priced out of Harlem and they came to Brooklyn and Brooklyn prices were going up. But it made sense for them to pool their resources with another couple, buy a 2-family brownstone and be able to live the lifestyle that you want to live right now with others. And it's just like renting an apartment, right? One couple had one unit, the other couple had the other unit. There were separate utilities and it just worked. Right? As long as there's some type of agreement or protection in place to protect them if something happens.
How long ago did you start this?
I started this in 2019. I resigned from JP Morgan. And then COVID happened, right? And then the market went all over the place.
It sure did.
And so it wasn't just, putting it out to consumers. It was also talking to consumers and then talking to the partners in a transaction. Because I would talk to the client and they would say, oh, my agent said they were against it. Or my lender said, never do that, right? And so it was important for us to go back and provide education for agents and lenders to see how they can, help their clients get into homes, especially as prices continue to go up and rates continue to go up.
Indeed, and continue. So the working as a mortgage broker and understanding finances and understanding putting people together, parents with children, other, whatever. So you got the partnership stuff anyway. Genius how you decided to take that from mortgage broking, right?
Yeah.
And doing that finance stuff to putting people together in general. People are complicated.
Yeah.
As I said in the beginning, everything we can do in life can be very complicated. I think sometimes, though, that I know when you pair people together in the right way, even back to the dating apps, it does work out.
People get married.
And believe me, I've known plenty of people who have got married, and I keep saying, well, what about me? Okay, it hasn't happened on my end. Okay, whatever. But there's hope.
Exactly.
You never know. So once two people are paired, what does the process look like, from the beginning? Do they start, if they didn't know each other, for example, if they didn't know each other, do they start communicating more? Do they start talking about the deal? Do they start looking for property together?
Yes.
Because you compare somebody, right? Now you have to go out and look. And I'm interested in what you said before, depending on different neighborhoods, right? If I want to live in a neighborhood, but I really can't afford it on my own, but now I'm paired with you, and maybe the two of us together can do that. So how does that process go from the beginning, right? You pair them, you think this is a good match, they agree. Now, do they start looking for property, or do they already generally have one before they come to you?
Well, first they vet each other.
Okay.
So they get a joint dashboard where they can go through the different questionnaires, and also talk about some of the things that concern them with the prenup and begin to build that. And then we connect them with agents that'll find them the property that they're looking for. So some choose to live with one another. Some choose to just be investors.
Business partners.
And so I had 3 women. 2 were married and 1 wasn't. The one that wasn't married wanted to live at the property. The others owned property on their own. And so it just worked. And so once they get on the dashboard, we have communication tools where they can start communicating with each other, sharing different properties that they like, and then connecting them with the agent. And then once they find that property, the agent takes them out, looking at property, they solidify the property, we connect them to the lender, and we kind of package that deal.
Okay, so you get involved with the lender aspect as well.
Absolutely. My background is in lending, and so it's all about that creative financing, right? And making the deal work and looking at credit, income, and assets, and combining the two. So we want to make sure that we have lender-ready buyers so that we can hand them over to our partners. So we're vetting. We're really underwriting. The lender underwrites the deal.
Yeah.
We underwrite the partnership.
Right. And together, it forms success. So let's talk about the legal structure. You mentioned the exit strategy a little while ago. But so how are legal structures and exit strategies handled if one partner wants to kind of opt out early?
Yes.
I mean, I'm sure that happens.
It happens.
I mean, it happens on the business, traditional business as well.
Yes.
So for any legal ramifications, I mean, I guess the contract is written to favor either staying together or, if necessary, divorcing. How does that work?
They can exit, and an exit means either they can buy them out, right. So it depends on how much equity the property has in it, or they can, again, choose to leave and not live there if they live there. But sometimes it's unexpected, right? And then there are different ways that we can structure that. Like I said, if there's one person that can't afford to pay anymore, then the other ones, there is a pot, right? So in addition to your monthly mortgage payment, you also put in an additional payment for escrow, just in case something happens, right? And then the more you stop paying, it chips away your equity and the other partners gain equity. If you pass away, you want to make sure that the deed is in, tenants in common so that if something happens, it can go to the partners, or you can change the deed to make it go to their heirs, right? And so there are different things that we can do up front to make sure that once someone wants to exit, there's a structure and a process in place.
In New York City,
okay,
because we're living and working in New York City and we're most familiar with real estate and how it works here, how do lenders and brokers respond to these partnerships based on, the complexity of our transactions or our deals? I don't even want to get into the co-op stuff. But
that's a little more complex.
Well, that's very complex. But at the end of the day, how do, agents and brokers and lenders kind of view this? Is it like one more transaction, or, oh, wow, this is going to be one more transaction, but a little more work or a lot more work?
Well, that's the great thing because...
And also, how do you convince them that these two are compatible? I mean, really compatible?
Well, the bank doesn't care. right? The bank is looking at the numbers. Income,
right.
assets, and credit. It's actually a
Very
hack.
black and white.
Yeah, it's a hack. Lenders don't care about that.
Yeah.
And so there's no special product or program that you need to do these transactions. And in terms of agents, I mean, they're happy.
They don't care either.
Because they can get the deal done, right?
They don't care either.
Exactly.
They want a
and
deal.
most likely they may get asking price, right? Or closer to asking price because you have two compatible buyers that are able to combine and join their incomes together. So the partners don't really care, right? The attorney probably looks, but that's the good thing about the prenup is that everything and all the questions that need to be answered are in the document. So when it gets to the attorney to solidify it, the buyers have already had those conversations.
Okay, now I've sold condominiums to partners.
Okay.
Through the years. I'm doing this 24 years, whatever. And either friends or couples who are not yet married and they're both, getting involved together because at some point they're going to get married and, whatever. That always seemed to work well.
Yeah.
So my question is going to be outside of the condominium arena in this town, we have co-ops. And co-ops are just so difficult to begin with across the board.
Yeah.
Okay. On every level, whether it's one person, even if you have lots and lots of money, do you have any experience with your partnerships going into a co-op and the co-op saying, hey, wait a minute,
Co-ops are difficult.
Okay.
These transactions don't typically work on co-ops.
Okay.
They work well on condos and 1 to 4 family properties. But because there are so many restrictions on co-ops, right?
Yeah.
Unless they're family members.
Okay.
Yeah. And so, we don't do a lot of transactional co-ops.
But even family members, though, in the co-op world, we've had issues with, saying parents are buying with children.
Yeah.
Or the co-op says, you got to be joint owners. You can't just give your child the down payment money and then walk away. They want to make sure that,
that they're on the loan.
And
right?
that they're on the loan
liable.
and that they're on the lease, the proprietary lease, whatever. Because if something goes wrong and the child doesn't pay, they want to know that there's someone behind that kid that is willing, young adult that is willing, to pick up the pieces there. But co-ops in general are just complex.
They're difficult. But another, aside from parents, there are also a lot of non-traditional work that people do in New York, right? That aren't always documented. And then they match with someone who does have W-2 income or documented.
I was going to ask you about that too. For example, a real estate agent going out to buy a property.
Perfect example.
Right?
Yeah.
We're 1099s. We don't have income. We only get paid when we do something. Now there's a world.
Yeah.
And so I know on the purchase side, I purchased one apartment as an agent. I had bought before that as a corporate America person making a salary. It's difficult.
It is.
Right? So when you're putting them together, and one may make a lot of money in real estate or as an independent contractor, as a consultant, whatever, and the other one might have that steady paycheck coming in, how does that work?
Well, that becomes a perfect match.
Okay.
Right? Because you have one who's on the books and then you have one who's off the books. And the one off the books may be more cash heavy than the one on the books. So the one on the books is kind of lacking that cash flow. And so together they're both able to qualify. Now you have one person on a mortgage and the other one might not be on a mortgage. They might just be on a deed as owner. And that's where the prenup really comes in, right? Because that's where the risk is. One is responsible for the loan and the other one isn't. And so you really have to make sure those things are in that prenup to make sure that they're protected. If one stops paying, even though they're not on a mortgage, you still want to have a consequence for that.
Right. And when people come to you and ask for your help, obviously you explain all these steps, right? Do they get it? Do they understand it? Do they say, hey, yes, let's press forward, let's move forward, let's get on with it? Because I have to assume that it's very exciting for people who really can't do this on their own.
Yeah.
And then if you're telling them, hey, we can do this together, here are all the reasons why. I can see, them being very excited about that. Again, I wonder, in our process of real estate, when do they actually start looking? After they're paired, after they're, financially, stronger? Or do they kind of do this on their own and say, well, I found this apartment, but I can't really do it on my own. Nikki, come and help me.
Yeah. A lot of times they find the property first.
Okay.
And they fall in love with the property. What do you say to people who fall in love with the property? Don't fall in love with the property.
Don't fall in love with the property.
But they fall in love with the property.
Because the property may not fall in love with you back.
Right, exactly. And then they may be over leveraged. They can't afford it. And then they're scrambling for a partner at that point. And then you get a lot of family members that already live together, right? That decide to kind of buy something together. But it's mostly people who find the property first and they want to get in that property, and then they look for those partners.
Are they more first-time buyers that you're working with, or buyers who have bought before and now maybe wanted to buy a second property?
I would say both.
As investor?
That's ideal, though. You have a first-time home buyer who can't afford to purchase in that neighborhood alone. They purchase the property with a partner, and they may be an investor. Now, an investor is considered someone who owns their primary resident already, right? In our eyes.
Right.
And they want to step up and increase their portfolio. So ideally, they get with a first-time home buyer. They live there. They have skin in the game. Right? And then they're just an investor. They can choose to be a silent investor. They can choose to be engaged. So that's kind of like the perfect match. You have a first-time home buyer and someone who wants to build out their portfolio. And the good thing is that once they form that partnership and that partnership is going well, and we've already vetted a bunch of people in that pool, they can do it again. They can rinse and repeat. They can continue to build their portfolio with vetted partners.
Well, I was going to ask you that because on the investor side, especially whenever we have investors come to us, not all the time, but most of the time, at least in my orbit, these investors have bought before.
Yeah.
And they've done things before. And so they might be up to their third or fourth property,
right.
in some cases maybe 5, 6 or whatever. And the old expression is, in order to build wealth really well in our life, you invest in real estate. So you're buying property and maybe you need help a second time. And I was working with an investor about 2 years ago who was looking on their own and decided, well, I really like this building, but it's just a little too much for just me.
Yeah.
And he said, do you know anybody else who wants to come in with me? And I'm like, no, now I do know where I can go and get that help.
And it's not just money.
No.
He said it's too much for him, right?
Too much
Buying
for
a property,
him.
owning a property, managing a property, maintaining a property is difficult to do by yourself, especially in New York and all the rules that we have.
And investors kind of want to take a step back. They're managing stuff and watching stuff, collecting stuff. But he was really disappointed because he didn't have anybody that he could go to quickly enough to say, hey, do you want to come in this way? Now I know where I can send people, and we'll talk about that after the break, because he had to kind of find something else that was more comfortable for him from a financial perspective.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We got to take a quick break. We're coming right back there. Don't go anywhere. Talking New York Real Estate right here on the More Network. We will be right back.
This podcast is supported by the More Network, powered by Brown Harris Stevens. Real estate touches every aspect of our lives, from design and architecture to investing and the economy. Now there's a way to get all your real estate information in one place. The More Network. With more than 20 podcast and webcast series, the Mastery of Real Estate Network is powered by Brown Harris Stevens, one of the country's most distinguished brokerages. Discover advice from notable entrepreneurs, compelling topics, and access to top global real estate experts. Subscribe to their YouTube and Apple podcast channels by visiting getmorenetwork.com.
Okay, we are back. So, Nikki, question for you. As a real estate agent, I have people, as I just explained before the break, who may need partnership help, whatever. Explain to our audience out there how people should come to you, where they can find you, what it is you're looking for, because we know sometimes people come to you, partners come to you for your help, but then also maybe one person will come to you and you'll say, I got the perfect match for you. Matchmaking, I love that word.
Matchmaking for real estate.
Matchmaking for real estate, absolutely. But it applies, right?
No, it does. It does. Let me just mention that I work in Manhattan. I purchased my first property in Brooklyn. And when I wanted to purchase another property, I was over leveraged. And so
right.
I asked one of my coworkers, I said, hey, I'm trying to buy this property.
Oh, my goodness.
You want to buy it with me?
Right.
And he said, yes.
Yeah.
And we purchased a property together. We co-bought 20 years ago. And now that property has doubled, tripled, quadrupled in value. And I was able to buy him out years after we purchased the property and own it on my own, which I couldn't do initially. And so that changed my life, right? It allowed me to be able to quit my job and now open a company so more people can do it. So it is definitely something that people should consider. Because I know a lot of people have given up on buying in New York because it's so expensive. But New York is still the place to buy. The value always seems to hold up. And
it absolutely does. And so I would ask you, because prices have gone up so much post-COVID and things have changed monthly, we talked about on the show a couple of weeks ago, it's more than the purchase price today. It's more of the carrying costs.
Oh, yeah.
That are very high. And so sometimes people say, hey, Vince, I can afford the price, but look at these monthlies. I can't really do this. So maybe a partnership works on that level. Hopefully it does. But are you finding more people coming to you these days seeking partnerships because of carrying costs being too high, purchase prices continuing to escalate and raise despite what everybody else says they're doing? What's the rub on that? I mean, I would assume your business has gotten busier.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember when I first started this in 2019, people were like, are you crazy? I would never do that. And now they're coming and saying, that's not a bad idea.
No, not at all.
Because of the prices. And so I believe in 2024, there were 276 billion loans that closed for non-married buyers. So
276 billion?
Billion non-married buyers. Right. So
wow.
People are already doing this. I think Zillow just did a survey on whether people will be willing to do this. And more people are saying that they will do this, especially in high cost cities like New York and California. So these transactions are becoming more common, which is why we need the infrastructure in place to make sure that people are doing these deals safely. Are
you working primarily in New York, or do you reach out to whoever is anywhere else and wants your help?
So we're a national company, but we have partnerships here in New York, and we also have partnerships in the Bay Area, California, which is the second largest, or maybe the first.
High-priced neighborhood,
definitely.
Sure.
Both of them are high-cost areas. So yeah, we are a national company, and one of the things that we're doing, we just launched our app, and so similar to a dating app, right? You go on, you build out your profile. We provide all the tools for free. So for you to build your profile and self-assess, because any partnership starts with that self-assessment to see what your individual buying power is and then how much more you need to afford the property you want. And so those tools are free. Buyers will have to pay to match or to invite their partners on the platform so that they can share that dashboard and begin to build their prenup and use the vetting tools.
What is the app called, and where can our viewers and listeners find it? So
the app is PairGAP, so they can search for PairGAP on Apple and Android, and they're able to download and get on a waiting list. We need 500 buyers before we can start matching, so 500 fully built profiles.
Sure.
So a person has to build out their profile before they can actually get in a pool. And so
they sign on and they fill out their profile, and it asks all kinds of questions and kind of vets them through the questions you're asking, right?
Absolutely.
And then you go back and you review all of these profiles once they're done. And kind of, how do you find the right one? Like 500, 1,000 of them, I can only imagine. Right? How do you pick the right ones?
We created a matching logic. And so we're able to match them based on similar goals, similarities in their personalities, similarities in the type of property they want, the area that they want to purchase in. So there's a lot of different variables that we look at before we match a buyer. But it's not just finances. So it's finances, personality, location, type of property. Right. And so we put all of that together to find the perfect match.
Talk about the book. Let me have that for a minute.
Yes.
Talk about your book. I'm going to read this. I have not had an opportunity to do so just yet. Paired.
Yes.
What inspired you to do this, aside from, talking about your company and your business and what it is you're successfully doing out there? What inspired you to write a book? Writing a book is not easy.
It's not easy.
It's not easy. I've been trying to do one for a long time, and I keep putting it off.
Yes.
Tell us about it.
Well, the book is really a playbook of people who want to get into these partnerships, right? There's a lot of what ifs. Everyone always says, well, what if this happens? Well, what if that happens? And the book answers all the questions. So if anyone is thinking about this partnership and they want to learn more, and they want to learn more about compatibility, about how they protect themselves, we have a professional matchmaking interview.
A dating guide to real estate partnerships. Here we go again, right? I love it.
Investor dating.
Yes, exactly. But it's perfectly,
No, it is. But it's a relationship book, but it's about partnership, business partnership. So when you think about buying real estate together, you are business partners. And that book goes through all the things that you need to look for to find the right partner and to be able to sustain that relationship. So that book can help you in real estate partnership and relationship partnerships, right? A lot of people in relationships don't ask those financial questions. They don't ask those hard questions.
No.
I think the biggest reason for divorce is communication and finances, right?
100%.
And so those are the things that we focus on, and that book really sums it up.
And rethinking the American dream, right? I mean, isn't real estate really about buying your American dream? I mean, from a child, I remember my dad saying, you've got to grow up, you got to get a job with a pension.
Yeah.
In those days, and you got to go buy real estate.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
The American dream.
Yeah.
People come to this country from all over the world wanting to buy real estate.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So do you work with people from foreign lands as well? Because, foreign buyers, for the longest time were very big purchasers here in New York City. Do you work or pair people from foreign countries together, or do you not do that?
Well, we haven't yet.
Okay.
And so the goal is really, one, to let people know that we exist, right?
Correct.
Because people are thinking about this, and we want to let them know that there's a platform out there that will help protect them through these transactions. And so we haven't done a lot of foreign, but I'm sure as word spreads and we kind of get our product out there, we'll get more and more people that are interested in doing it that don't live here.
You have another section in there, that said something about what people don't tell you. Oh. Right? I mean, I don't even know where to begin with that, because people, say to me, are you telling me everything? I'm like, well, I'm trying to, right?
Right, because there's so many things to around real estate. There's so many things to learn, and you learn as you go. That's why you have to continue to revisit those contracts, right?
Correct.
Because things change.
Correct. And the prenup. So 5 years from now, is this a niche solution or a mainstream shift in how people are buying real estate? I would venture a guess and say it's going to become very, very mainstream and like routine.
It's already. All right. I believe that this is the future in how people are going to purchase homes, right? Our young people, our millennials out there, they're having a tough time purchasing homes, but it just makes sense to gather together. I think in New York, there's over 35% of people that are living doubled up. So they're already living together as roommates. And this is not an income thing, right? It's more than, income. It's lifestyle, right?
It's lifestyle.
Yeah. So it has to do with a lot of things. And more and more people are going to be leaning toward partnerships just to make it affordable.
You do great with reading my mind, because I was thinking as you were talking, I want to ask her about people who are currently living together, roommates, friends, college buddies, whatever. because they can't afford the rent on their own either. So it's kind of similar to what your company is doing, right? So they're pairing together, they're joining together to pay rent together.
Yes.
So how many of those folks take it to the next level and say, we've already lived together, we already know enough or a lot about each other, should we consider buying something together?
No, absolutely. More and more people, we have events across the city. We partner with JP Morgan to really introduce this concept to different, to every borough. We're visiting every borough this year. And so there's more and more people that are bringing their partners there, right? We have an investor speed dating network and session. And so there's another way that people can meet compatible partners. And in the end of this tour, you know, to bring everybody together, to get them vetted, to match them up, whether they know each other or not, is the goal. And more people, like I said, are willing to do this because they're already doing it, right? They're already living together. So there's co-living that has gone crazy in New York. So hopefully co-buying is the next step.
Yeah, I mean, especially like I said, when they're fresh out of school and they're coming to New York or already here, they're renting together because they really cannot afford, you know, to do it on their own. So going forward, the advice you would give anybody who is thinking about wanting to buy something, I don't really know, and I need a little help, and maybe my parents can't help me, you know, et cetera. What is the advice you would give people who are listening and watching today out there to be in contact with you, to be in contact with the company, to help them get to where their next step is? Because, you know, young folk, anybody, you know, it's a step at a time.
Yeah.
It's one foot in front of the other.
Absolutely.
To get to your ultimate goal or the American dream, as we want to call it.
Yeah. And to start looking within their circles, right? There's someone that's, you know, looking to purchase as you are. They're looking to start their real estate portfolio. So really start looking in your network, because there are people that you can match with already. And then if you can't find people in your network, then of course, come to PairGAP. We'll help you vet them. You can find us on PairGAP.com. You can find us on any social media outlet. We're growing a company.
And that's what it really takes when you're building a company, you're starting a company. But getting that word out there, you know, it's just like independent contractors as agents, right?
Yeah.
You know, I always tell people, you know, we've talked about it on the show before, you know, when I was managing agents, people say, but Vince, I don't know, you know, my phone's not ringing and no one's calling me and I don't know how I'm going to get business and blah, blah. And I used to say to them, why are they calling you?
Right.
Why should they call you? Okay.
Right.
You got to get out there and do it yourself.
You do.
Get out there and call them and put yourself out there and network. I would assume it's the same thing on the pairing side where, you know, you should be actively looking for people who can help you in your immediate goal or future goal of wanting to own real estate. Again, going back to what my dad told me, hey, you got to buy a piece of the rock, that old expression. You got to buy real estate. You've got to invest, because guess what? Real estate is really where wealth is found.
Absolutely.
And if you start with a partner, you start with a pair, you know, based on your advice, how bad is that?
No, it makes sense.
And your individual story where you asked somebody to help you, and then 20 years later or whatever, you bought them out and now you own it.
It changed my life.
Right. Okay. You would not have been able to do that in the very beginning.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. I think more and more people should seek out partnership in order to reach their goals faster. And so our goal is to really let people know that we exist. And we're here to help any partners that are ready to go through this transaction. But even real estate professionals, how many people do you have in your pipeline right now that were pre-approved or pre-qualified and they haven't been able to find anything yet? So imagine looking in a lender's pipeline, a real estate agent's pipeline. That's low-hanging fruit. Those are people that you can transition into home ownership like that.
Well, this is why I said before, you know, this is such a great business and such a great concept. Why it didn't happen decades ago, right?
I know. But
that's okay.
Have trust now. I feel like with technology, it's allowing us to trust more. Who knew Uber would work, right? Being in a stranger's car. Who knew Airbnb would work? And so when people say,
Isn't that
who's
correct?
going to buy homes together with people that they don't know, with strangers? Well, we've seen a lot of things that we didn't think could happen.
And it's happening.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. And Uber, I was one of the first ones to say, what? What is that? Who needs that? Are you kidding me? What's wrong with my New York City yellow taxi cab?
Right.
Now, you can't live without these car services, right?
I'm telling you. And it's all around trust. And so as we continue to utilize technology and be in a more trusted society, more and more, especially in real estate, right? Real estate needs to change in terms of this. So these transactions are going to grow.
Trust. One last question. So again, giving me good ideas. When you're putting people together, pairing people together, you're looking at everything, right? Because you're the expert. You kind of know, all the steps and the strategies, whatever.
Yeah.
Do you oftentimes or even at all decide that this might be a little trust issue between the two of them and then kind of move on to something else?
Oh, yeah.
Pair them with somebody else? I have to assume that trust become a big thing.
Or they might not be a good partner, right? I had someone come in and they just needed a partner to get him out of trouble, right?
Never a good beginning.
Never a good beginning. And we realized that they just weren't ready for partnership, right? They just wanted to kind of get out of the red and then didn't want to give up any equity, right? I said, you might as well just hire someone because that's not a partnership.
No.
But yeah, there are definitely people that don't fit or make good partners. And so it's hard for them to actually find a fit until they're willing to give up something.
And sometimes, people are not willing to give up too much. And that's when the professionals come in and say, okay, listen to me.
Absolutely.
I have a feeling you get your way with these people and get them to start thinking what they need to be thinking because, again, I'm going to repeat myself. This concept is amazing. And I personally wish it was around, decades ago. People were always buying things together, but not necessarily the correct way or not vetted the correct way.
Or structured.
Structured.
It's all about structure.
With that prenup, I love that word, prenup.
Yes.
It's absolutely perfect. All right, we got to take another break, quick break, coming back with my final thoughts right after this. Nikki, that was incredible.
Good.
Thank you for joining us.
I appreciate it.
We'll be right back.
Hi, it's Stephen Bailey from Roadway Moving and Storage. Listening to Vince Rocco, you know the right partner makes all the difference. At Roadway, we deliver an experience your clients will love. For specialized services and white glove care, choose Roadway. Want to learn more? Email me at stephen@roadwaymoving.com or visit roadwaymoving.com.
Okay, everybody, we are back with my final thoughts. At its core, this isn't just about splitting a purchase. It's about rethinking access to ownership altogether. PairGAP is tapping into something real, the gap between what people can afford individually and what's possible when capital, strategy, and alignment come together. The opportunity is clear. More people in the market, more pathways to ownership, more flexibility, and how deals get done. But the risk is just as real because partnerships doesn't remove complexity, it shifts it from financing to human dynamics. And that's the real question going forward, not just whether people can buy together, but whether they can do it well. Because if they can, this isn't about a workaround, it's a structured shift in how real estate gets done. And that's it for this episode of Talking New York Real Estate. We should always remember it's not about grand promises or overnight change. It's about intention, choosing clarity over noise, growth over comfort, and being deliberate with how we show up every day. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching and being a part of the conversation. If this episode brought value, share it, subscribe, and keep asking the questions that matter. Until next time, stay informed, stay intentional, and keep finding your space. You can follow me on Facebook, on Threads, Instagram, LinkedIn, Blue Sky, Substack, or TikTok at Vince Rocco. And William Faulkner says you cannot swim for new horizons until you have the courage to lose sight of the shore. And from all of us here at Talking New York Real Estate and the More Network to all of you all around the world, thanks again for spending a part of your day with us. I am so grateful. Keep thinking the good thoughts, and I will see you next time. Goodbye, everybody.